Soon may the wellerman come, bring us coffee, tea, and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, take our leave and go. At a fair in the sun of town, her hair was blonde and this was brown. Soon may the wellerman come around. Around the end of September, Kentucky Lake starts to get really lazy. There's just not a lot going on. The tourist season is winding down, kids are back in school, and most pleasure boats and ski boats are being put away for the winter. To me, September has a strange sense of liminality about it. It's not quite summer, not quite fall, somewhere in between. This outing in my home-built 12-foot skiff almost perfectly exemplifies the lazy, liminal days of September. The water is low and getting lower as it's being drawn down to winter pool, something I associate with cold weather, but yet, here in the middle of September, temperatures are still hovering in the high 80s, and not much wind to speak of on this day. I've spent so much time seeking out remote waters to explore, such as feeder creeks of the Cumberland in LBL and the narrower Cumberland down south near Dover, Tennessee, that I sometimes neglect the more popular bays on Kentucky Lake, much closer to my own backyard. It almost sounds ridiculous in a way. This is probably the most popular creek/bay on Kentucky Lake. It's Big Bear Bay, and yet I have never been to the back of Big Bear Bay to check out Bear Creek proper. So that's the mission today. I'm drifting along with the faintest whisper of a northeast wind. It's nowhere near enough to bother getting the sail up, but that actually makes good sense in this situation, because while it may look like I'm surrounded by a ton of water here in the back of the creek, everything outside of the deep creek channel is only about a foot or less. So I'm trying to pick my way along the creek channel, and even the creek channel is only 2 or 3 feet at the deepest, which is obviously plenty for this skiff, but it can be annoying if you get outside of the channel, even in a very shallow drafting boat like this. You can get stuck in the mud. Luckily, this series of stakeouts was more or less marking the boundaries of the channel, and I just used those to navigate. Otherwise, it would have been kind of tricky. As the lake level drops, geese will tend to congregate on the mudflats as they dry out, and I'm thinking they're probably finding some kind of food source here, but I don't know specifically what. I've noticed that late season geese are much less timid than geese in the spring when they're nesting. If a nesting goose spots me in springtime, they will not hesitate to sound the alarm, honking as loud as they can if I get anywhere near them. These ones were keeping an eye on me and shuffled out of the way a few feet, but didn't really seem too bothered by my presence. I skimmed just over the top of an old beaver dam as the creek started to narrow out and resemble an actual creek. I got the camera rolling just in time to catch the tail end of this copperhead skating away down the creek. It had been sunning itself on a gravel bar. Wish I could have got a little closer and got more detail. I really don't see copperheads nearly as much as I see timber rattlers, and I don't think the timber rattler is more common. I think copperheads are probably more common, but for whatever reason, I just tend to encounter the rattlesnakes more. My dad, who's spent a lifetime fishing this lake, told me about an instance where he was back in a creek like this in a bass boat or maybe a small john boat and actually had a snake drop down from a tree limb into the boat and gave him and his buddy a little bit of a scare. And apparently that's a pretty common occurrence. I haven't had it happen to me yet, but when I'm back in these creeks, I do keep an eye on overhanging limbs just to see if there's any snakes perched there. The lower creek was almost totally free of debris and dead wood until I came to this big tree trunk blocking the way just as the creek turned sharply to the right. If I was really determined, I could probably slide through that little gap to the right, But this was my second creek exploration of the day, and I was getting pretty tired. I leave the rest of Bear Creek unexplored, at least until another day. Pennants are now available at cumberlandrover.com. Historically flown for signal purposes, a pennant is that indescribable something that your boat is missing. They can help you read the wind, increase visibility of your small craft, and they just look cool, fluttering from the masthead or yard of a lug sail. You can have any color you want, as long as it's bright red. I have 2 styles of pennant now available at cumberlandrover.com.